Hey, everybody. Welcome to another week of One Bookshelf 101. Today, we have a very special guest with us, and I'm very excited to introduce them. Um, they have been kind of a shadowy figure in the back. You've heard about them. You may have sort of interacted with them through us, but they are here to come hang out with us and talk about print on demand books today. Just kind of a quick overview. We have a lot to cover today. And one of the things that we run into a lot is print on demand situations, whether that's having problems with upload or having, common printer issues and things like that. So we're going to kind of go over a lot of that today. So let's get right into it. First and foremost, thank you to Lysa Penrose, who's the best, and our tech wizard. We could not do this without Lysa, so thank you so much. So I'd like to introduce Pauline. Pauline, can you tell us about yourself?
Hello, yes. My name's Pauline Benney. I'm the Director of Print and Digital Design for OneBookshelf. And when you're having problems with files and you're asking your lovely publisher relations people what's going on, it's usually me that they send your files to ask what's going on. I'd say maybe about half the time. You guys got it most of the time on your onesies. But yeah, so, and if you have questions about any of the tutorials or the publisher knowledge base, those can come to me as well, because I write a lot of that content. And yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. So the line of saying that Pauline's kind of a shadowy figure in the background is we discourage publishers to reach out to them directly. And the reason for that is because most of the time, like Pauline mentioned, is we can kind of figure it out before we have to send it to Pauline. Sometimes it's very obvious where we're like, oh, it's this, so we want to make sure that, we kind of use Pauline in that regard.
Sometimes it's questions I don't have the answers to that you guys know way better, far better than I do
Sure.
regarding the site and stuff
Yeah.
like that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so as everyone knows, or you might not know, we do have print on demand books. We have them in a variety of sizes, and they come from a printer called Lightning Source. We have two printers, right, Pauline? Two printers, US and UK. Yep, and they have a boatload of formats, and we've been with them for longer than I have been here. So they have been
10
our number
years.
one printer. 10 years. Happy 10
10
years,
years.
Lightning Source.
Happy 10 years. It's also probably noteworthy to uh, give a little high five to ODT, which is our card
Yes.
printer as well.
Mhm.
And they have been integrated with us now for quite a while as well, maybe 6-8 years,
Yeah,
maybe, right?
I know it was like right before I started. It's been a while. So we'll definitely go over cards another time because that is
Correct.
also a
Most things that are covered by books are covered by cards too, but the
mhm.
specs and the information is different. So I'm happy we
Yeah.
could do another one for cards at another
Yeah,
time.
we
Great.
absolutely can. All right, so we're going to kind of over the basics. What's going to happen is I'm going to essentially ask Pauline questions, kind of an interview format, because they're very knowledgeable and they will have the answers. So let's just kick it off. And of course, if you have any questions too, please let us know in the chat. Our lovely mod, also / tech wizard, Lysa Penrose, will make sure we get that. So yeah, let's rock and roll. All right. How are POD and digital different? Pauline, what is the difference between when I say what is screen versus print?
Our digital files they come in an array of different types of files. They're most commonly PDFs, a digital PDF, which is a book put together in a PDF format, so that has bookmarking and linking and other features, layers in some of them. It could be a PDF, it could be an EPUB, MOBI file, STL for 3D printing, or a JPEG file, which maps often are JPEG files and a separate file from a book if you want a larger size map. They're just to be viewed on screen, on tablet, on your phone, on your computer. And then the POD books they are print on demand books. The files are set up only in PDF to be sent to print. And the digital print technology allows for even just a single book to be printed at one time. So it's not the same as old presses where we would buy huge reams of paper. Now it's just printed just the single book at a time, or whatever the number in your order is of books at a time. So it saves paper, it saves a lot of waste just in general.
Mhm.
And I'm very happy with that technology. So anytime a customer orders one of your POD files, just that book is printed and it is shipped directly from the printer to your customer. Um, when things are spec for digital versus spec, and by spec I mean the specifications, maybe I should start with that. The detailed specifications for a screen viewed file versus a printed file are very different. I want to start by pointing out that your monitor and most home printers only print at 150 DPI, whereas print files that need to go to press have to be at least 300 DPI. The resolution is a huge difference, as well as with color. So your monitors and your home printers are only going to show you RGB, red, green, blue color mixtures, whereas at press it's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And that mix is a higher definition color and a higher definition DPI to give you a nice, pretty solid print. But on your screen, the higher the resolution, anything over 150 dots per inch is not going to be helpful. You're not going to see any more information. So they're commonly just simplified to make the viewing a lot quicker, a lot higher, a lot snappier, brighter, contrastier.
Awesome.
So you cannot use the same file that you would use for digital as a print file. Their specifications are far too different. And I'd like to, since we're talking about color differences too, I'd like to note that what you see on your monitor when you're putting together your files for print on demand are not exactly what you're going to see when the file prints. I know that's a little tricky, but you're going to be viewing them at a lower resolution and in a different color profile than they're actually going to print. So please keep that in mind when you're designing your files, that you're using colors that will easily transfer. You don't want to have too dark a saturation of color because then it causes problems at press.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yep.
That kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Um,
I guess you could color correct your monitor, but then you have to buy the software and the Huey color coder. Like it's just it's a lot more investment if you're going to try and properly put your if you're going to try and calibrate your monitors, it's a lot more cost goes into it to do that
mhm.
properly.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So what is the one second. Pauline, can you mute maybe when I'm chatting, just so we can halt that fun feedback? Thank you so much. It's very hard when you're talking and you can hear yourself like 1 second later because you're just like, what did I just say? I appreciate you. Okay, so what's perfect bound, what's case bound? I'll answer that because it's very simple. It's their way of saying hardcover and soft cover, or soft cover and hardcover. Perfect bound is soft cover. Case laminate is hardcover. I always think of it to separate it, that I always think of like a hard case. That's always what makes me do that. So although internally, like, and when you're uploading and stuff, it's called soft cover and hardcover, you might see that used where it's perfect bound or case laminate. So that's what the difference is, which is pretty
You see that
simple.
often on the templates for the covers. For the
Mhm.
templates.
Pauline also worked with tech, and we now have a super rad tool that Pauline has asked for as long as I can remember. So I'm really excited that we got that. But it is a template generator. So in the past, you'd have to go to the publisher knowledge base, download all the templates, figure out which template you're going to use. Now we have it where one, it's on the publisher hub, it's under book printing, it's the second link. And what's nice about it too is if you have like a freelancer that does layout for you, is you can send them that link and it spits out the cover and the interior template that you need specifically for your size and format. So that's really, really nice.
It still does have, like, right, it's a quick fill-in. Just tell it what templates you're looking for,
Hmm.
and it'll give you the templates that you need, which is delightful. I think the interiors still might give you the whole breadth of interiors for that section, for that software. Might still be all of them, but it's not a big file by any means.
Yeah. Awesome. Good to know. Okay. Do you offer dust covers, metallic, numbering, etc.? Why not? I will also take this one because I get this question a lot. Um, so just because Lightning Source has it on their site does not mean that we have that in our contract. We can always ask Lightning Source. We can always say, hey, can we get metallic, or can we get dust covers, what have you. It's going to depend on the volume of people that ask for it. Because if it's one person who's like, can you do 3 by 5 books, and you're the only publisher that asks for that, then it's a little bit harder to go to Lightning Source with it. But yeah, it's just because you see it on Lightning Source doesn't mean that we have it. And we don't encourage you to go to Lightning Source and upload it yourself, because it's not going to work like that. I wanted to have a note on that too. We've had publishers in the past, because they couldn't get a format on our site to go to Lightning Source, and then they didn't understand why, they couldn't sell it on drive-through. It's because when you have a book up there, it can't be a double book, essentially. Like, you have to do it through our site. And it's a lot of back end work too. If you load the Lightning Source and you say, oh, I want it to go to drive-through, like, we have to go in, we have to talk to our reps, we have to move it. It's a whole process. So yeah, always hoping to add more formats and things like that. But yeah, that's what's going on.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Templates we went over. Oh, hey, Pauline, why do I need a separate cover? And why do I need to use your cover template?
Well, thanks for asking, Meredith. There's the Every time a book is done in print, regardless if it's print on demand or web press, the cover is always a separate file from the interior. And this is because the cover is actually printed on a different press than the interior. The reason why it has to be on one of the cover templates that comes from us is because it has all the printer information on there. It tells the printer what type of paper you want, what size you're printing, how many pages the book is. None of that information is on the internal file as a setup. It's all on your cover file. So all your printer information will be found there for them, so they know how to take care of your files. Um, the barcode that we ask for the last page on the internal on the um, interior file for your book is because the cover and the interior are printed in two different places, two different presses. So that barcode is how they match your cover and your interior up. So it's very important to either short your book one page or have the last page just a blank page so the printer can put that barcode on there. Don't want to forget that barcode.
The barcode's super important too, because we have a lot of people who say, like, can I put my ISBN? And we say you can't. You can put it in the interior if you want to. That's usually like, or get stickers. That's usually what we suggest. But as they said, like, the thing is A, it helps match it up. And B, the other thing too is that SKU that they create, that Lightning Source creates, is how we look up things. So we don't say, I want to look up Pauline's like super cool RPG. We pull up the SKU number. And so that helps us communicate with Lightning Source as well when we say, hey, this SKU number has a problem, because they can't see it on that end. They can see like the title and stuff, but like if you have a title like Dragons Are Cool, there's probably a lot of books called Dragons Are Cool.
That's
So yeah, that's why
And
we use
even
the
the
SKU number.
different formats, every book that you publish through us has its own specific SKU. So if you print the same book as a hardcover and a softcover, say, those also have different SKUs, so you can identify which book it is by the SKU.
Yes,
Absolutely,
that's why
super
that
important.
super important. Um, okay. All right. Let's talk about bleed. Bleed. Pauline's left the meeting. Oh no. I too get really scared about bleed. It's kind of important to me as a person. So I'll talk about bleed until they show Pauline.
Sorry
Welcome
about
back.
that. It's
That's
because
okay.
cats.
Oh, because cats. I was gonna say,
because
I thought you left because we mentioned bleed. So
that's a good enough reason.
it's a good reason.
That's a really good reason.
So bleed, I'm gonna let Pauline kind of go into that, but the thing that's most important to note is bleed is one of the biggest common print errors we run into because it's very easy to miss. It's very easy to miss. It's on export, especially for InDesign, and so I myself, who have done layout design, I have completely forgotten to click the bleeds. And I was confident. I was like, this book is perfect, you know, and I sent Pauline and they were like, there's no bleeds. And I was like, what? Because it's so easy to miss. So, Pauline, can you go over for why do we need a bleed? Um, can we skip it?
Well, you cannot skip it. And to your point about being a layout and design person and having missed bleeds, I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and I forget to do it. The issue there is that most software, when you're exporting your finished file, we ask for it to be a particular compliancy, and when you set the compliancy, it defaults the bleeds to be shut off, which most software does that. And so when you're in a hurry, you just set the compliancy and you export. And then I'm like yelling at my computer, and then I check my file and I was wrong and there's no bleed. So it's a super common error. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. Seasoned designers do it. It's just what happens. So how your bleeds work is it's a little bit, it's a 1/8 inch border on the outside three edges of your page. And the reason for that is that when files are printed, when interiors are printed, it gives a little bit of room, just that tiny little bit of room for if there's any drift. If the page shifts at all, you won't get a white line or any superfluous information um, at the bottom or top or the outside edge of your page. So it's just a tiny little bit, and it's just enough to make it work. You cannot skip it because your book will not print. In fact, you will not be able to upload a file that does not have bleeds on it, or incorrect bleeds. You won't be able to upload it to the site. Um, Often another error when people are rushing and exporting books is they leave the bleed turned on on all four sides of each page, and that will give you a bleed that's too large. And again, you won't be able to upload it to the site. It'll fail. So it's very important to double check your bleeds. On our publisher knowledge base, under common errors, there's a whole section that tells you how to fix your bleeds if you've missed them, how to check your own file to make sure your bleeds are intact. There's a lot of information there to help you get through your bleed hurdles to jump over. And I want to mention too that there's two other things that you need to consider along with your bleed. Bleed is not the same thing as slug, and bleed is not the same thing as safety. These are confusing terms for people who haven't been in the industry for a million years. Slugs are almost never used anymore. It's an old system that's set up to have print information outside of the bleed. And it's usually printer information, and it's rarely used anymore. But since there are still old web presses that call for that, it's still an option. Please don't put slug on any files, interior or covers. Slugs just add information that causes issue. Safety, however, is a little bit of a different thing. Your safety is the area from the page edge inside, whereas the bleed is the page edge and outside. Because of that small shift that I told you about, where when it's on press, the page can shimmy a little bit or shift a little bit. We don't want any of your awesome writing, your design, all the hard work you put into it. We don't want it to get chopped off. So it can't go to the edge unless it's going to bleed. If it's text that needs to be there, page numbers, design elements that need to stay on the page consistently, it needs to be a minimum of 1/8 of an inch inside the page edge. So 1/4 of an inch from the bleed edge. Our printer actually asks for 1/4 of an inch from page edge, and I think that that's a better recommendation to have. It just makes for a cleaner design. But as long as you're 1/8 of an inch in for the safety, you're usually pretty clear. It's within the margins, and there's not much chance that anything's going to go very wrong. But anything outside of that, you run the risk of it getting trimmed or cropped accidentally. So it's super important to make sure you understand the difference between bleed and slug and safety. And every book should not have slug and should have bleed and safety for
And
every
no
single.
printer marks.
No printer marks, not when you export your cover, not when you export your interior. Your cover has the printer marks already set on it and all the print info already. Yeah. And if you add printer marks, then when you try and upload the file or any of the print information on the interior, it's going to think that you have the bleeds wrong and it won't let you upload it. It'll just make you sad. We don't want you sad.
Mm-mm. So, Pauline, thank you. Yeah, that's super important. And also the opposite problem too. Like either you're going to cut it really, really close, and or you're going to have a nice thin white line around because you didn't extend the artwork to the bleed point. So that's super, super important. So something that's good to know, especially if your background's not white, because that has happened. Same goes for the cover as well. That has happened before. If you don't size the cover correctly on the template, um, any area is gonna there's marks for it specifically where you pull the corners to. So it's right there. It's very obvious. But yeah, you can run into the same problem too. So that's important. Bleed's important. Gutter's important, that you touched on as well, because that's where they glue the pages together. So if you don't want your text to go into the spine. That's not a fun time. We don't have a good time with that. Okay. We went over that. Software. Why does it matter? Oh, I love this question. Why does it matter what program I create my files with, and what do we support? I'll go over it, and Pauline can go a little bit deeper. Um, InDesign is great. It is paid, but it's, in my opinion, and probably Pauline's opinion, it's the best out of the three that I'm going to list. Scribus is free. It is a very, very big learning curve. So, like although it is free, like it's a little tough. But we do have templates for both. And just introduced kind of like in the last year is Affinity, which is very, very, very close to InDesign. It's also paid, but it is slightly cheaper. Um, and Affinity also, we have templates for that too, I believe. So Pauline, did you want to kind of run down your experience? Don't send us Word files. That's
Yeah.
huge. Sorry, please don't send us Word files ever, or publisher files, because in the past we've maybe had like a publisher have it work right on a black and white book where it kind of doesn't matter or whatever, and it's worked. And so people are like, well, if it works for them, it'll work for my full cover, like color book. And Word, don't use Word for POD. Go ahead,
Well,
Pauline.
that and as the presses, even if it worked maybe 2 years ago, the presses have been updated. The technology gets updated, and you cannot make a file to correct spec now to be printed. And now the way that the file checks and the way that the printers have been updated, you can't use Word. You can't get the proper file compliance. You can't get a flattened file. You can't. Word just prevents you from doing a lot of things that can make your book really pretty when it comes to print. Like Meredith said, InDesign is the gold standard. It's been the print standard for a long time. Back in the days of Cork and Photoshop, there were wars between different design companies, but basically InDesign is what most printers use, most designers use. Affinity is produced by Page Plus, which has been around for a really long time, and they've had lots of really good software in the past. The Affinity suite is 3 different programs, and it's $40 for each one. It's delightful. It's really robust. They're not side by side with Adobe. So, for example, you can't open an InDesign file in their publishing program. But you can open up a PDF, or you can open up Photoshop files in their image editing program. So it's not one-to-one. You can open Illustrator files in their illustration program. It's not one-to-one, but it is super robust, and I highly recommend it, particularly over Scribus for right now, because It is a big learning curve for Skybus. We are not going to be supporting it any longer. We do currently have tutorials and we have templates. Those are going to stay as is. We're not going to be updating those because you have so much to learn before you even get started just to have a free program. We feel that if you want to publish, that $40 isn't too much to invest in yourself to publish, and that's really all you need. And from there, we can help you get across the line every time. On the publisher knowledge base, we have tutorials for all 3 of these programs. It's step by step, so if you've never done it before, you should be able to get through it. There's lots of questions answered. There's lots of screenshots to help you see side by side what it should look like. If you're a seasoned designer, there are just specs on the publisher knowledge base, so you don't have to go through the tutorials. It's just a quick spec list so you can see the numbers you need to see and put it together and do it. But there is backup for all of that. Like I said, for each of the bits of software, there's information, lots of information.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So we kind of talked about the software. And yeah, those are our 3. And like we have templates, tutorials, and stuff, and highly, highly recommend it. So next stage is the proof stage, which is I will touch on because I deal with that a lot. So our card and our book printers have different proofing times. Cards are within 24 hours, I think, that you can order a proof. It's very, very quick. Books are a little bit different. Books, we usually say 3 to 5 business days from upload. It can take shorter or longer than that, but like that's kind of the average. So what happens is you upload your files. They get sent to Lightning Source and they get sent to what is called pre-media. So they have a pre-medium team, and what they do is they check over to see if it has the correct specs. If it does, it'll be approved. If it doesn't, most of the time Lightning Source will say like rejected due to like over ink, which we can talk about ink density, but like they'll tell you specifically what's wrong with it. The reason it is so important to get your specs right the first time is because pre-media is human. It's not a computer. They're a team. And if person 1, okay, talks about,
I'm just gonna laugh at this. I'm sorry. This is frustrating, and I'm so glad you're
it's so,
telling
yeah. So,
publishers about it because we're stuck in the in between on that. So thank you for
yeah.
bringing it.
So I'm going to say Bob and Diana both work on Premedia. I don't know their real names. I'm sure they're wonderful people. But Bob and Diana, so I sent in my files and Bob says, this looks great. Approved. You get the proof and it looks fine. And then I'm like, oh crap, there's a typo. And really in actuality, it's not set up correctly. Like it's not exported correctly or there's a problem with it. Now it goes to Diana and Diana goes, oh, this book isn't gonna work. Like it's not, doesn't meet spec. Now Diana can deny and reject it. And so we get a lot of confused publishers because they're like, well, it was approved before. It possibly that it slipped through and that they approved it. Another thing too with proofs is your proofs are 9 times out of 10 exactly how they're going to print. But they, as a note, this is not a situation where they print a bunch and it's at a warehouse. It's print on demand, which means that it's possible because we have a lot of times too, like publishers are like, hey, this printed out fine, and like now there's an issue with it. That is why it is so important to make sure. And the other thing too that we always offer all of the time, and I wish everyone would take advantage of it, is when you're done with your files, you can send them to us and say, hey, did I do this right? And we go, hey, Pauline, like, did they do this right? And they'll look it over and they'll double check because this saves you and us headaches because you upload the file, it's 3 to 5 days, right? 3 to 5 business days for it to get approved. And then you have to order the proof, you have to wait for the proof, and then you get the proof and you find out it's not what you're looking for. So we're more than happy to double check your files just to be sure. Even if you are super confident, you're like, I 100% know this is perfect. It checks everything. if you're
Because
like,
like we
just check
said,
it.
even when we're absolutely sure we did it perfect because we've done it for 400 years, and then it's all you don't have bleed, and we're like, yes, it does. I know what I'm doing, and then we check the file, and even with ourselves, we've missed exporting with bleed. It has no bearing on how good you are at your job. It really doesn't. It's so easy to slip any one of the specs when you're exporting. Just is.
Exactly. So that's, yeah, that's super important. So why do you have to order a proof every single time? Because of what we said. So if you are like, I just had a typo, right? What if you forgot to hit the bleeds this time? What if you forgot to export it as a PDFX, which is the format that it should be in? What if you forgot that step? Now, if you didn't order a proof and all your customers get these bad proofs that have problems with them, we can't replace the file. We cannot replace the book. We cannot replace the book. You can replace the file a million times. Um, we cannot replace the book because it's a file issue. Now, if Lightning Source makes the issue, if there's a printer issue, like 100% it's on Lightning Source, they will replace it. And please tell us that too. That's another thing too. Like publishers won't tell us. They'll just be like, "Oh, I guess this is how it is forever." Like, just talk to us. We'll double check if something looks wrong. But yeah, that's another important thing too, because a lot of times publishers are like, "Yeah, but I just changed a typo," and we're like, "Yeah, but if your book's wrong, like, and you went through Bob at Premedia and he approved it, like, we can't replace those books." So super super important to double check. And like I said, Pauline will check them. Like, that's what they're here for. They're here to help us out. So, which is good. Yeah. Um my proof looks bad. How do I fix it? Send us your files. Send us your files. And we'll look it over. Um and it's true too a lot of
Have a look at
times. Oh, go ahead. Go.
published knowledge base too. If you don't have time to, if you're in a rush, you don't want to wait for feedback, or your file's printed horribly and you're like, oh my God, this is embarrassing, which don't be, because little mistakes make big problems. But you can always look at the publisher knowledge base, which has a whole section on common errors, on the most common errors and how to fix them yourself. And if that looks daunting, yeah, send them to us. We're happy to take a look and tell you exactly what issues have gotten overlooked. Absolutely.
I'm trying to think what else. And 9 times out of 10 too, like if you're proof, sometimes we get people who say this is a printer error, and we're like, we still need to look at the files, because Lightning Source won't. We have to, because that helps me when I write to Lightning Source, where I'm like, hey, our production team, Pauline and or Sandra, have checked these files, and they said yes, like this is 100%, like the files are great, there's no problems. It gives us more, for Lightning Source to replace it, essentially, because if not, they have to go to their pre-media team, they have to double check the files, they have to go through this, and it's a long process. So you want to cut corners, essentially. You want to like get there quicker. So very important. Um, I upload my files to the site. Why can't you just get them for me? Because not all of us have access to the server for Mac or PC issues, or it takes a long time to do it. I've
It's
had to have
also kind
Pauline
of
do it.
yeah, it's kind of tedious because like we were talking about that very important SKU number. That's how we look up your stuff. However, it's not archived. It's not saved on our site using that number. So it's a combination of other numbers that we have to pull and piece together in order to find your file. Because once it's on the server, we ideally should never need access to it again. So there's not really a need for us to have to be able to go through and find your files. Please remember to archive your own work. Even if you just archive the PDFs, it'll do you a lot of good, for sure.
I keep I keep being like, oh, I'm muted. Um, yeah, it's just easier to the times that we like kind of pull down the files is when we're like not sure. So if you're like, I don't know if I uploaded, my version 2 or my version 3, or I'm not sure, or I am sure, that we had that happen actually this week. We had a publisher reach out and say, "Hey, this book printed volume 1. It's for volume 2." And I was like, "Well, that's weird." And it's possible that Lightning Source can do that, is they can pull the wrong file. Very rare, but can happen. But Pauline pulled it down and was like, "Nope, these are volume 1." Like, so I had to go back to the publisher and say, "Hey, these are volume 1. Here's that." So
And like I said, that's an easy mistake. It's like you're
super.
uploading files and you're just doing your thing, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, why did this happen? Please don't ever be embarrassed by that. It's really, really common. There's a lot of technical things that are going on when you're putting together your print files. Never be worried about asking for help.
That's like I think like the main takeaway from this 101 is like never be afraid to ask for help. We just want to help you like so much. That's all we want to do is help you. Um I uploaded new files since I placed my order, requested a replacement from you. I need this title in 1 day or everything will explode. Will they use no files? No. Um so, as we mentioned with print on demand, it can take 3 to 5 business days to process. When you upload your files, once they've been sent to the printer, your POD file, your POD option for customers will disappear. The reason for this, and this, it's hard because, like, yes, we absolutely want your book to still be in print, but the problem is that let's say version 1 has like glaring problems with it. If you upload version 2, it takes down that version 1 so that we don't have more customers get the previous copy, because that causes more work for our customer service team because, they might have ordered during the time you uploaded or what have you. So that is why those are turned off.
Also, the printer can't on there and they can't replace the file in the queue if there's already orders. They actually have to wait for all the orders for that book to clear before they can replace the file that they're currently using. So you can't have people ordering more while that one's waiting to be replaced. The printer's just not able to replace it while it's in use. It will have when we were talking about the SKU numbers, when you upload a new file, it replaces the SKU so that it's not creating an independent SKU for that for the second version or your third version. It's the same SKU, so they can't have two different books with the same active SKU going at the same time. That would just be ridiculously
Yeah.
hard to track anything.
Yeah. And I know, like, especially like we mentioned, like if you're just fixing a typo, like it's to keep everyone like essentially safe and happy, and where we don't have to add more work for you, more work for the customer, more work for customer service. So that is why we do that. We have, as mentioned, if you go to your publisher page, so the publish tab, once you sign in, there's a big old link for the publisher knowledge base. The publisher knowledge base has a lot of resources, not only for all of our different tools, but for POD. And as Pauline has mentioned, they have been the ones who have created these different articles and things like that to help you along. And yeah, so that's pretty cool. Pauline, great job. The one we use the most that we send to publishers is called, and I'll put it in the YouTube link too, or description. It's Thursday, and so the one we use the most is correcting most common print errors. There's like 5, I think, that are basically, it kind of matches up with the idea that your book has to spec, and it's these specs specifically. So we went over bleed and gutter. Um, it has to be exported as a PDF X file.
I'm
Uh,
talking without my microphone on now.
great.
PDFX A1 2001 or PDFX A1 2003.
Hmm.
Cards have different specs.
Yes.
Get confused.
Don't get confused. I remember that the first time I was working, I was Brian had CC'd me on something, and I like tried to almost like jump to correct him and be like, Brian's our cards expert, and I was like, wait, no, 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 and I was like, wait, and so they are different specs. So definitely check the specs between cards and books. It's super important. Um, so export, gutter, and bleed, um, over ink density. Can you go over that a little bit, Pauline?
Yeah, let's talk about that really quick. So again, this is a different spec between cards and books. Cards will allow 300% ink coverage. And we have two different issues that we need to discuss here. There's ink density and there's ink coverage. So anytime you're putting together a design, let's say you put down a background and then you put a piece of art on top of it, and then there's text that lays on top of that. Now you have 3 different layers of ink, and the cumulative average of those 3 different layers is going to be a percentage that's over 100. If that ink gets too thick and you have too many layers all on top of each other, it will make the pages stick together before it's dry. If it makes it through okay, the customer 2 months later could have the ink chipping and falling off like bad nail polish. It's just, there's so many different reasons to, again, for your own quality, for your product to have a set quality, parts of it are in your control, and this is one of them. So if so the layered ink on your page is considered the ink coverage. So the amount of ink in any particular place needs to remain for books at 240% or less. Like Meredith said, we do cover that on the in the common errors, and in the tutorials it comes up to. But to do that, there's many different ways to do that, and it's a little bit longer, but you can do it before you put it into your layout software. You can do it in layout, and you can do it once it's already done if you have Acrobat. Most of the other PDF programs will not properly correct it. And we do actually, even in the tutorials, we offer a download link for a color profile, which won't allow your colors on export to be over 240%. The other type of ink that we need to talk about is density. And this is an issue sometimes in black and white more than anything else. It's the amount of the page covered by ink. So if it's a full page black background with a tiny little white block of text in the middle, this can be problematic. Not necessarily from a quality standpoint, but from a printing standpoint. If you have that much of the page covered by ink and it's a lighter paper weight, like the black and white usually is, as the paper dries, it'll curl. Like when you get a page wet in a book, reading in the bathtub, and then that page gets all wavy and curled, the same thing will happen if you have too much of it covered by ink. So while that's not always an issue, it is something to keep in mind, particularly with black and white, because it is a lighter weight paper. The heavier the paper, so to the standard printing for color and the premium printing for color, it's less of an issue because the paper's thicker. So if you have, even like if your book is black and white and it has a lot of the pages covered completely in dark ink, I recommend using the premium color print anyway. You'll get a higher quality, it'll look less muddy, it'll have a nice gloss on it, it'll just look better all around. Yeah, so it can just in the weight of the paper can make a big difference with that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the weight's so important too. Yeah, if you have heavy art book, go premium. Um, that will that'll be good. So, um, there was one more thing. Oh, CID fonts, Pauline. It's something a lot more rare that we run into, but I would say once a month I run into that. Can we talk quickly about
Yes.
CID fonts?
And I think it's actually something that over time will become less and less of an issue. So CID is a type of font compression, and it was made originally for logographic languages like Chinese and Vietnamese, Japanese, languages that have symbols for the words or for parts of words. And it's a way to embed it where it just embeds parts of the characters instead of the entire font, so that it makes a smaller file for an alphabet that has hundreds of characters. For like Cyrillic for Russian languages, stuff like that, it's a highly effective compression. For anything you're doing in any of the Latin or Germanic based languages, English, Spanish, Italian, German, we have a limited alphabet. In English, 26 letters. It's a small language to compress the whole thing. And if you're using one of the non-logographic languages and you're embedding the file, you need to have all the fonts for that embedded, all the parts of the fonts. And for most of the books that we do, you are using one of these languages. If it doesn't have the full breadth of the letters properly embedded, when it goes to press, it can drop out entire letters. It can make black or white blocks where a letter should be because it doesn't have all the information for that. So if your font has a CID embedding on it, it may not print properly. Now this is a type of embedding that is getting used more and more, so it may become less and less of a problem, but it's still something to keep an eye on because we want the best quality print just like you do. We want your books to look beautiful and we want you to be happy with them every time.
That's super important. And I think the other thing I need to point out too, that kind of like encompasses all this is lightning source is not psychic. That's another thing too, is that while you know how your book is supposed to look, lightning source, you have to pretend that lightning source is never, well, I mean, because they haven't heard of your game, know how it looks, knows how it's supposed to look. So when you're giving them files, like you are saying, this is how the book is supposed to look based on the files, because so they don't know. We've had that happen a couple of times where um, people have been like, well, it's supposed to, it's supposed to be this or it's supposed to be this, and it's like, whatever your files you're handing Lightning Source, assume that they have no idea what you're trying to do. So that's why it's important to meet those specs.
For example, if a file has doesn't have the proper compliance or color, it may print like your images may print with a black background behind them, covering up some of your text. They have no way of knowing if you did that on purpose or not. They just really don't. So they're going to print it that way and send it to you, and then you're going to be upset and think it's a printer error when it was just one of those tiny little things, just a transparency that should have been flattened that wasn't. Tiny errors can make big looking problems that aren't
Yeah,
really that big a looking problem
yeah.
at the end.
On that note too, Pauline, what type of, just simple one word answer, what type of image files should I be using?
TIFF every time, TIFF, TIFF files
Because if
every
you use
time.
PNG, what happens?
PNG can only be red, green, blue color. It cannot be CMYK, which is what the print needs, and it will output poorly every time. You can use JPEGs, they're a little less stable, so you might get color shifting. But if you use a TIFF image file, what you see is what you should get, with the exceptions of what I said with color, screen color, and resolution difference.
Can I use Photoshop files?
PSD files, you
Yep,
mean? Yeah,
PSD file.
yes, you can. And the transparencies that you set in the PSD file will transfer into the layout that you're working on. However, it is a larger file that is more complex and it can cause issues down the line. So for if you're trying to put an image down that has no white behind it, you are better off to put a clipping path on it and make it a TIFF file than to erase the background and put it in as a PSD file. You're better off just putting a clipping path around it.
Okay. Adriel wrote our outline, so I'm like laughing at their little like funny jokes in in our outline. So if you see me like randomly laughing, I'm laughing at Adriel. Um, when I used X service software or other printer, I could do Y. Why can't I do Y with you? Every printer is different. And the other thing is too, is like we kind of touched on in the beginning, is we have a very specific contract with them that outlines what we can and can't do. And there's some things that Lightning Source can't do that other printers can do. The reason we use Lightning Source is because so far, we have found out they price wise, we have the best in the business with Lightning Source. Quality is very important to us. We have gone to other printers, we won't name names, where their quality was not as good. And to us, like, that's number one. We want our publishers to feel confident with their books. And although the specs can sometimes be a lot, it's kind of the price we pay for it, right? Like it's, and they're great. We love Lightning Source, so that's super important to mention.
I
um
want to note, sorry,
yeah,
I'm interrupting
go
you,
go go.
but I'd like to note that our service is completely automated. Once your files are uploaded to us, they're automated, sent to Lightning Source. their system automatically takes it in and it goes to the people at Premedia to look at. And then once it's ripped through them, it's automatic right to the site, that nobody looks at it in between when a customer orders it and when it gets printed anymore, which is why you need to order a proof so that you know exactly how it looks. But also, this is how we're able to keep the pricing down, is because it's an automated service. So some other print houses, you upload your file and somebody looks at it and fixes the little thingies for you, and it's going to cost more because you're paying to have somebody fix little things. We're
Mhm.
not. We will help you fix your file to make it look exactly how you want it.
Yeah.
However, there isn't somebody in between to do the corrections without you knowing about it.
Yeah. That's important. And the other thing too about, yeah, I mean, like you get to keep essentially the same rep through everything, which is kind of nice. So that's really good. And the thing is too, is if you do try out our print service and you're like, this is not, I'm not jamming with this, that is okay. Like that's why print, if you're exclusive with us digitally, like you can be non-exclusive for print. We get it 100%. But we at least want to try and help you. So like please let us do that. That would be really rad. Why can't my title be live with the new files I up yeah. That's what we were talking about too. So the other thing as well is when your proof gets shipped. Okay, so when you get the email that says your proof's been shipped, essentially our server has an internal clock, and if that clock is not met, so like let's say you get it super fast, let's say like it's like it'll be there in 7 days and you get it like day 4. If that happens, just let us know, because essentially what we do is we'll reach out to tech to stop the clock, um, to where you'll be able to turn it live, or we can turn it live for you. That's also another thing too. So yeah, that's important to note. That's just again to stop people if they're like, I don't need to order proof. I'm just going to do it. We don't we don't want to cause you more money. Like we don't want to with cost you give you essentially taking care of all these books. Like we're trying to help you to where you don't have to pay a lot of money. You just have to pay for the cost of a proof and delivery. That's what we want.
And it's a simple equation. When you look good, that makes us look good. So it's in our best interest to make sure your book looks good and that you're enjoying what you're doing and that your customers are
Mhm.
enjoying your product.
Yeah.
That's what we live for. It
Yeah.
really just is.
What are the benefits of POD? There's a lot. Number one, because it's print on demand, you don't have to have a warehouse or have these in your garage and have to ship them out yourself. You can do that. That is an option. We do have a lot of publishers who ship to warehouses or ship to third party distributors. So that's fine. But like, you just kind of sit back. Once the book's live, like you don't got to do anything. It's just there. Number two, a lot of people like print books. I love print books over digital. And I'm not the entire 100% demographic, right? Like there are going to be some people who are like totally fine with digital. If you turn to me and say, here is a book, and if you're giving me the option to have the physical book, I will take the physical book every time. It's giving another option as well to your readers. And it's like I said, it's important to give as many formats as possible. I mean, for a number of reasons, including accessibility, like you want to make sure that you give that to your customers. And again, you don't have to, you're not literally, you don't have to do anything. Like they order it, Lightning Source deals with it, like it gets shipped. You never have to talk to Lightning Source or us ever again. If you if you want to, so Pauline, you had to figure out what's up.
You were talking about accessibility, and although that's a whole different conversation, I did want to note that on our publisher knowledge base in the digital section, there is a whole section on accessibility for people that are need other ways to read your digital files. For sure.
Yeah, super and super important. And we have alt text on our images as well. I mean, there's a lot of accessibility, and we're constantly working for more accessibility too, especially with our new site. So I'm pretty excited about that. Um, let me see what else. Adria, leave us out with anything else. Um, Q&A. I don't believe we got any questions, but that is okay because it's a lot. But I can tell you this: when I started at DriveThru, I had no idea what I was doing for print. I made a lot of mistakes, but now it's just second nature. Like once you like do it once or twice, you're gonna be like, "This is I got this. This is a cakewalk."
That's
Um,
absolutely true. Once you've jumped through the hoops the first time, it might be frustrating. The second time, you're like, oh, I did that again. Oh no. And then the third time, you're like, yawn,
yeah,
just skating right through. Yeah.
exactly.
And we're
So
here to help you jump all those hoops. We're here to give you boosts and lifts and harnesses all the way through until you run it on your own without an issue.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and now's a good time too to talk about the Discord we have as well. Pauline is not on the Discord. I'm not going to put them on the Discord. No, they're just going to sit over there. It's fine.
I'm just gonna
Uh,
hide in my little dark corner.
yeah. Our Discord is really helpful. It's if it's your first time. We don't have enough people yet to have our own custom, but we're getting there. Um, if you go to your publisher knowledge base, or not knowledge base, I'm sorry, publisher hub, with your tools, if you go to the last one, which is help, there is a link to our Discord. It's very helpful in the sense if you have like a quick question. Most of the time there's other publishers on there who can help you, like especially if you ask at 3 in the morning, like I am sleeping. I unfortunately can't get to it, but they might be able to help you troubleshoot it, which is kind of nice because there's a lot of people who have gone through the same process with the print on demand, which is great. So, yeah, that is pretty much the overview of print on demand books. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at publisher services at onebookshelf.com. If you didn't understand something or you need, like, hey, like, what about this type of situation? We're always happy to help. If we don't know, we'll ask Pauline and Sandra, who are on our production team, and they're more than happy to help. So, which is great. Um, yeah. So if there's no questions, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, Pauline, I don't
Thank you,
know.
man, for running through everything on here.
Hey, thanks so much for
We
being
love our
here.
publishers. We
We
just
really
want you guys
do.
to be happy
We
too.
really do. We love our publisher and community content creator clients so very much. And like, we just want you to kick butt and do well. And we're here to help you along. And yeah, so thank you so much for joining us, Pauline. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
You're welcome. I also want to highlight one thing too. Usually on outros we do social media and stuff like that, but Pauline, I know you're not on the social medias, but that's okay. But
Not
I
for
want
work is
not
stuff,
for
so
work. No.
not for
Um,
work stuff.
can you in a minute? Can you give the fine folks at home like kind of like your quick experience, like your history with
Oh,
doing
sure.
layout?
Sure. Um, it's funny. I actually started my very first job doing in publishing doing layout was for, when you're coming out of the grocery store and there's those magazines selling houses and cars. Like that was my first job doing layout. I worked for Harman Publishing, which is it cracks me up. I started when I was 19. Was my first job in publishing, and I will be 50 this year. So that is how long I've been working in publishing. When I first started, when I was first in school, uh, when I graduated from university the first time is when Cork was released. So when I was released, it was the same time as Cork, and I had already outdated skill set. So it's been really funny trying to keep up with the technology. It moves really quickly, and that's super interesting to me because there's always stuff to learn. My first job working in gaming was I worked for White Wolf for a really long time. I love those guys. I miss them terribly. I was an art director for Vampire Requiem, for Hunter, The Reckoning, and for Demon. And I had a really good time doing all that work. It was a lot of fun working with artists and doing that. And I've been now with OneBookshelf for just last year was 10 years that I've been here, and I love the people I work with, and I love seeing what the publishers and content creators come up with. Like it's exciting to see new products come out and to see how creative people can be and the ideas that they come up with. It's just a joy to see what people can make.
Well, happy 10-year anniversary to you and Lightning Source. What a great year. So thank you so much again, Pauline, for joining us. Thank you to Lysa so much for being our moderator and our wizard tech. We could not do it without Lysa.
She's
Um,
at everything.
yeah, like the best. Literally the best. Lisa's the best. Like full stop. Um, so um I didn't introduce myself at the top. I don't think I'm Meredith
Oh, Meredith.
Gerber.
All right. So here, let me do the thing. So Meredith, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do here at One Bookshelf?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Meredith Gerber. I'm the Century Publisher Relations Representative at DriveThruRPG, which means I take care of the top 100 publishers and their community content programs. Um, yeah, I've been with One Bookshelf for it'll be 7 years this year, which is it 7? Holy cats, it's 7.
I still
Um,
think of you like you're my baby. You're
yeah.
almost as old as me.
Yeah, and so that's me. And you can find me on the internet. Twitter, Meredith Gerber, Instagram, Meredith A. Gerber, if you want to look at cats and food. And my personal stuff is meredithgerber.com. But yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. We are on here usually Thursday at 10 o'clock a.m. PST for an hour where we're playing games or Lisa's talking to DM's Guild, Amazing Humans, or we're doing this or a ton of other stuff. We do have a new stream coming this month, which is called History Check. That'll be with myself and Pug Studies Eddie Webb as well. And we're going to go over some history of the industry, which I'm really excited about. So it's going to be really, really awesome. So, yeah, thank you, Pauline, for joining us. Thank you, chat, for joining us. Thank you, Lisa. And we will see you on your lunch break next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.